back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I am here today to do a book review. This is a book that is a finalist in the SPFBO competition for which I am a judge, and I have to read 9 other books as well as my own finalist, and I have to submit a score for each of those books, which all goes on the scoreboard. I'll link the scoreboard below if you guys are interested. There are also 9 other judges doing the exact same thing, reading all of the finalists, and we each give a score, and at the end of everyone putting in all their scores, we find out who the winner of SPFBO 2019 is. So it's a very exciting time in the competition, and I am just gonna sit down and review this book for you so that you guys can find out what I thought of this one. This one was a long book. It's, I think, one of the longest for the finalists. It's about 730-ish pages, so it took me a couple days to get down to business with this one. I actually kind of read it largely in 2 chunks, so I read the majority of the first half, and then I took a little break for a few days whilst I was doing some other bits in just general life, and then I went back to it in the last few days, and I finished up today, in fact. So I wanted to sit down whilst it's fresh in my head and tell you guys about it, because this one was a mixed bag for me. It was good, but it also had some really annoying bits that I didn't like. So let's just dig into it. This is a story which follows a world where there are rivaling houses at play. So the main 2 that we are interested in as a reader is the House of Alliant and the House of Prinz. Now, these 2 houses have been kind of rivals for a long time, and at the point where we pick up our story, we follow one of the young girls who is part of House Alliante. That is Kira, who is Kira Delante, and she is, to all intents and purposes, pretty normal. She's fairly well-off, noble girl, fairly spoilt and privileged, hasn't really had much in her life to the point where we meet her that has kind of caused her too many problems. Now, this book is told in 2 different timelines. We have the timeline of Kira as a kind of young girl into an early young woman, and then we have her storyline much later where she has taken on a new identity as Kiris, who is a man, and she is in hiding. She is kind of a very different person to who we see in the first timeline. She has gone through a lot since the first timeline, and she's very bitter and she's very cut up about everything that's happened, and she has a lot of hatred and resentment. She's also come a long way since the naive young girl she used to be into the much more hardened warrior that she is today. So her story it's a difficult one because she essentially feels almost like 2 different people in the 2 different timelines. But she kind of is, and you get to understand exactly why she's gone from a very naive young girl into this very bitter, sad, frustrated lady who is in hiding as a man and who is on a revenge quest, which is what the large part of this book focuses on. Now, it's not all revenge. There is a love story at the centre of a lot of this as well. First off, we see Kira, the young girl who is attracted to Cassie's prince, who is a young nobleman coming over to her part of the world to negotiate a trade deal with her father. He and Kira end up doing the dirty together, and this is a no-no in a place where they are not married, they are not engaged, and so she is cast down as a serf to kind of just be a servant on her father's estates. This is the first bit of really bad luck and really bad things that happen to her. She also loses an arm as part of her punishment, and her story just goes from bad to worse after that. She ends up embroiled in what could become the next war in this land, and she also ends up involved with a man called Arsenault, who is very much a mystery for the majority of the book. Now, that's young Kira's story, and it goes on a long way beyond what I've just said, so I don't really consider any of that spoilery. You find all that out quite quick. But what you don't find out that quickly is where the connection between the 2 storylines happens. They start quite far apart, and then as the book goes on and you jump between them, you really get a sense of how it all ties together in the middle. And the storyline where Kira is older, she is Kiris, and she is a Gavro. She is kind of someone who is paid for money, a man for hire, and she's learnt a lot about killing. She's learnt a lot about brutality and how to protect herself. She's a very changed woman. She doesn't have the support of Arsenal anymore. Something's happened to him, but we don't know what for the majority of the book. And there's also a lot going on with conspiracies, people who are under the thrall of the prince. They don't want to be anymore, and so she is enlisted to assassinate Cassis, her ex-lover, which is a mission she's willing to take on after everything he cost her and how her life changed because of her dalliance with him. So this story has a lot going on, and it is a chunky book, so you would expect that. And I think the way that it's told in first person, makes you connect a lot more to Kira as a character, but equally makes you frustrated with her. Kira was a character who I found really difficult. I think as the young Kira, the one who is kind of a downtrodden noble who's been cast out by her family, I can relate to her a little bit easier than I can the older Kira who has taken up this very dangerous lifestyle. I think the younger version is a young girl who made a bad mistake and who is now paying for it with a lot of what she used to have being taken away from her. And I think the older version of her is much more kind of dark, much more dealing with a lot of things, and it's hard to really like her as the older timeline. In my view, I found her a harder person to connect with, and it's almost as though she's lost a bit of herself, which you kind of understand why as the story goes on. Now, the other main character is definitely Arsenault. He's a kind of Gavros who comes to her father's estate and almost ends up like a bodyguard and a lover to her as the story goes on. And you kind of get hints at his past, but it's so frustrating as a reader because I feel like there is so much that he hides from our main character Kira, and I found him so frustrating to read about. I can only imagine what a nightmare he would have been to be with in a relationship, but as a reader his story is fascinating because you just want to know, why is he doing things, where is he from, what are his real motivations and alliances, because you don't even really know whose side he's on for a lot of the book. And this book really plays with that. It really plays with who is working for who is on what team or what side, or are there even sides? Like, some people are switching between, some people's alliances have shifted over time. There's so much political intrigue and mystery that goes on in this book, and I think that's a good thing because it makes the reader constantly question everyone. But I also feel like it means that Kira is very, very hard to like and connect with because she doesn't allow any connections except for Arsenault, really. And she's just closed herself off so much that it's hard for her to really find a lot of sympathy for people or to really emote or connect with people. And that makes her a harder person to enjoy reading about, I think. I like this world, and I do like the fact that it is so very political and very hard-hitting as a storyline. There are dark things that happen in this book, and the author is not afraid to go into detail on some of the dark emotions that people have as well. However, I don't think the author does a great job of kind of involving the side characters in the story very much. It really feels like it is the Kira and Arsenault show, and they are the main characters by far, and the side characters who we do get a look at, they really don't feel particularly fleshed out or developed to me. We have another character called Mikelo who is kind of a main character almost, but you don't feel like he's anywhere near as developed as the other two. Now, the magic of this world is an interesting type as well, because we know that there are gods who are interfering with magic, but we don't quite know where magic comes from or the different types that people have for a lot of the book. And you do gradually uncover more information about where magic is from and how it works, but it's never fully explained, and it kind of feels a little bit like it's just plucked from the air sometimes, and sometimes people have the ability to do things and sometimes they don't, depending on kind of what gods are interfering and how much strength they have in their own abilities, I suppose, because there are certain times where people are talked into doing something they weren't sure they could, that kind of thing. I feel like the magic is loose, shall we say. There's a lot of it, it does cool things, but it doesn't have rules in the same way that some magic systems do. And that's not a bad thing, it just, that's how it works. So if you're expecting really complex magic, this doesn't have it, but it does have a lot of cool moments involving magic. So there's that. So you can see, hopefully, from my rambling review, how difficult this one is to talk about. Because it's so long and because there are so many good bits, I did like it, but then there are a few drawbacks that I think a bit of really solid editing and a bit of kind of development of other characters besides Kira and Arsenal could have really bumped this one up for me. So I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did like it. I think it's got some really, really good moments, and I would be interested to see what happens next, especially because the ending of this, the last few chapters, are very tense, and I'm so unsure what's going to go on with the rest of this world now that the ending has happened. So I'm intrigued for sure, but it's a big one. It's a commitment to sit down and read, and it did take me a while, and it didn't always feel like it was super easy to sit down and read it. It didn't feel like that pacey to me. It felt quite slow in places, and it felt like a lot of the book is them traveling across the world and uncovering the secrets of the past. So if you like that, you'll probably really enjoy it, but if you don't, it's probably not going to be a book for you. I think this one might be a little bit of a divisive one. I know so far it's got really good reviews, so I'm interested to see what all the other judges think of it as well. But for me, I think this is the trickiest one out of all the books I've read for SPFBO this year to rate, because I wasn't ever quite sure how I felt about it, but I did like it. I know that much. So 3.5, which is 7 out of 10 for SPFBO. I'd love to have your thoughts if you guys are happy to buy a book that is a bit longer and take some time sitting down and reading it. Please do let me know what you think of it when you do. I'd love to hear. And thank you all so much for watching. I will see you very soon in another video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.